Welcome back, you're watching MyAirMyles. In this final video about flying drones in Romania, I want to take you through the process that we had to complete to get the CAA height waiver approval, to get the MOD's filming approval, and to get the landowner's approval for filming and flying over the area. Thanks for watching, and let's get into it. The first thing you're going to want to do when planning to fly a drone in any country, really, is review the local country's CAA website and see what it says about flying drones and what the rules are. So for Romania, that is caa.ro. I'll put all these links in the description below so you can review them yourself if you want to fly to Romania and you want to get the latest and most up-to-date information. I'll put all these links in the description for you below for that. So you can read this page in English using the translate feature in Google Chrome, but I personally recommend reading it in the original Romanian. Something gets lost in translation and you just don't get a feeling for what the author wanted you to feel when you're reading it if you translate it into English. So, why do I say come to this page instead of some of the other useful pages out there on the internet that can give you a high-level overview of the rules and regulations of flying a drone in other countries? Well, for example, there are good websites out there, such as dronetraveler.com and uavcoach.com, that do give you a good overview of the rules and regulations of flying a drone in these countries. However, they're not always up to date, and sometimes you get incorrect information. For example, in the dronetraveler.com website, it says that a registration is necessary. Now, this suggests that a registration is necessary for every drone when flying in Romania, and it's just not the case. If your drone has a lighter maximum takeoff mass than 500 grams, you do not need to register your drone to get a registration number. So, let's take a look at where it says that in the CAA website. So if I search for gram, this section here says that they want to draw your attention to the fact that if your drone has a maximum takeoff maximum takeoff mass of less than 500 grams, you're under no obligation to have a certificate or ID for the drone under the AACR. For your benefit, I will translate it. We emphasize that the operators and owners of civil aircraft without pilot on board with a maximum takeoff mass of less than or equal to 500 grams have no legal obligation to request or hold an identification certificate issued by the AACR. And then it refers you to this OMT document, which I won't look at in this video, but is worth a read before you fly in Romania. So, that's good. It saves you about 90 euros, I think it is, to register your drone. If you have a drone such as the DJI Mavic Air, which we are flying, which is 430 grams maximum takeoff mass, you do not have to register it for an ID certificate in Romania. What you do have to do, however, is you do have to register to get approval to fly below the minimum safe altitudes. So in Romania, in an uncongested area, the minimum safe altitude for a drone is 150 meters. And in a congested area, the minimum safe altitude is 300 meters. Now, the maximum altitude for a drone in Romania is 300 meters. So, if you're in a congested area, technically, you could fly at 300 meters as long as your drone keeps perfect altitude and you can somehow get it up there without going through any other altitude. That seems a bit strange. So, you have to get approval from the CAA to fly below that. And what I did is I just requested for approval to go between the full 0 meters on the ground and 300 meters in the sky. I didn't want any restrictions on me for what I could and couldn't do in terms of altitude when flying the drone in Romania. So this is the document you have to complete to get your height waiver approval from the CAA in Romania. So you have to leave all the text is in Romanian, but you can answer the questions in English. So bear that in mind. They do speak English at the other side of this, but they don't like it if you change the Romanian into English for them. So, what this says is complete the document and send it to this email address. The document with all the attachments cannot be any bigger than 10 megabytes, and it tells you that you can get the coordinates that you need from the likes of Google Earth, Google Maps, and you have to send them pictures of the area from Google Earth, Google Maps where you want to fly. Then you have to provide some personal information, such as your name, if you're representing somebody else as a legal representative, your address, your telephone number, and your email address. Next up, it asks you for information about the drone. So the type of drone, if it has identification numbers, which we don't need because our drone is less than 500 grams, maximum takeoff mass. It then asks you what the maximum takeoff weight of your drone is, and we put in 0.43 because it's in kilograms, and that's the maximum takeoff weight of the DJI Mavic Air. Then it asks you for information about the types of flights you want to fly and the operations you want to do. So for all of my operations, I wanted to do video filming for non-commercial use. So that means I wanted to film the area, but I wasn't getting paid for it. I don't run ads on my YouTube channel, so there was no way I was going to get any financial revenue as a result of this filming, so I can register for approval under non-commercial operations. I wanted to do that between 21st and 22nd of October 2019 whilst I was in Romania, and then you have to give a zone of operations. You have to give this as 4 sets of XY geographic coordinates to ring fence the area where you plan to operate your drone in this window. And then you also have to tell them what your maximum operational altitude will be. As I discussed, we wanted the approval between 0 meters and 300 meters, so we put all of our flights up to 300 meters, even if we had no intention of flying that high in those areas. Why not ask for it? Finish up this document, and then I will go back and show you how we got the geographic coordinates. You have to then tell them what you're adding to the document, or what you're going to attach to the document that you're sending them, which is sort of any additional information to help them approve your request. For our non-commercial use, what we had to provide was a map of the area for all the flights, the DJI Mavic Air user manual, which I downloaded from the DJI website and attached, and a brief description of operations. So we'll go have a look at those all as well, but first let's have a look at how I got the geographic coordinates for these flights. To get the geographic coordinates for the boundary of the flight you want to get approval to fly, load up Google Maps and search for the area you want to fly in. Then if you just click in a spot, you'll see that at the bottom here, you'll get a summary of the area you just clicked on, that exact point. Now there's a bunch of numbers here at the bottom. These numbers here are the geographic coordinates. You can then copy that and paste that into the document, and you have to give them 4 sets of these. So, for example, we wanted to fly around this dam and up and over the water here. So we would have had to click, I can't remember the exact area we clicked, but here, say for example, then here, and then down here, for example. And you get that 4 coordinates, which they can then draw a box and go, okay, that is your zoned off area of operations. And it can be as wide or as small as you want, but you have to make sure you cover the entire area in which you plan to fly. You can also do this through Bing Maps if you're a fan of Bing Maps. So again, zooming into the area, you can click on the dot, and if you right click on Bing Maps, you can then go straight to copying the geographic coordinates. So if you Bing Maps, it might actually be slightly quicker, because you can just right click, grab the coordinates, 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 and you're done. Going back to the additional documents that I attached to the application, let's go through these in order. So one, I had to do map for all flights. So let's take a look at those. I have these screen captures which I took from Google Maps when I was getting my coordinates. So this is obviously the Kelly Bicazul Road. This was our area of operations for the dam, or the Barragio Bicaz. And finally, we had our area of operation for the Podesti and Moldova River. Next up, we had to provide the DJI Mavic Air user manual. Now, you can grab this from the DJI website. Go to DJI.com, go to Consumer, select your drone, Mavic Air, go to Downloads, and grab the user manual version 1.2. Finally, you have to give a brief description of your operations. Now, this is very straightforward document. You basically have to say how you're planning to fly, where you're planning to fly, and what you're planning to do. So here's our brief description of operations, and it really is brief. All of our flights will be height and distance limited by the DJI Go 4 app to a maximum of 300 meters in height, and a GPS boundary specified in the application. All flights will be recorded in a video format for personal recreational use, not commercial, focusing on the points of interest in the center of the GPS coordinates provided for each flight. The flights will not include overflight of densely populated areas or take off and land in urban areas. So all of our flights are going to be out in the countryside. And that's all you have to say. So the DJI Go 4 app does allow you to set a maximum height. It also does allow you to set a maximum distance from your takeoff point. If you're in the middle of your approved operational area, you can take a radius and then set that as your maximum operational distance in the DJI Go 4 app, and that will make sure that you stay within the boundaries of your approved area to fly. So you package all this up and you send it off to the CAA, and within 10 days they will come back to you with approval or rejection or asking for additional information. Okay, so if you've done everything correctly, within 10 days you will get your approval back from the CAA, and it will look something similar to what you see on the screen now. It gives you your approval, it tells you about your drone, it tells you who is allowed to fly the drone, the maximum height, if it's been approved to the height that you asked for, and the period of operation. It then says that you've got to fly within the regulations in Romania, and it gives you some details about that if you want to go and look up the documents. You then scroll down and you can see that they have then generated these maps for you with the pins on the areas which you gave them the geographic coordinates for. So you can see where I have been approved to fly, which was over the dam here. This very dark one is actually the road, but you can't really see the road from the satellite Google Earth images. And this here is the Moldova River. Again, you can see the operation boundaries on the picture here. So that's what your height waiver approval to fly in these areas looks like from the CAA. And you might think, well, that was a long process. I'm glad that's done. Well, you've only just scratched the surface. Next, you have to get the landowner approval for any area where you want to fly over that is a protected national park. So because the road that we flew over is a protected national park, I then had to go and seek approval from the landowner. So let's take a look at how we did that. When you search for the national parks in Romania, you don't always get the correct email address when you first search for it. So this actually delayed my approval, but when I managed to get through to the correct people, this is the email I sent to them. I requested access to fly over their park between 21 and 22 October for my holiday. I explained that I had approval from the CAA to fly, and that the Ministry of Defence had told me that I needed the approval of the landowner to film over the area. So I sent them an email, and I did have to follow up a couple of times with phone calls to these guys because they're obviously not used to getting these kind of requests. So I called them up and chased them on it, and then we got a reply, and thankfully they approved my request. So this is what the reply looks like. It says, yes, you can make your movie in our protected area with one condition. We also have a request, can we get a copy of your movie in order to use it for internal purposes? So that's fine. I sent them across a copy of our video when we got back, ahead of us releasing the video into YouTube. This is who I emailed to get their approval, and then I had to package this approval, the CAA approval, and all these documents, in addition to another document that you have to complete that's very similar to the CAA one, and send all of that off to the Ministry of Defence to get their approval to film my flights. At this point, I'm sure many of you are thinking, I would have given up by now, and I either wouldn't have taken my drone to Romania, I wouldn't have gone on holiday, or I would have just flown without permission and risked it, right? Because this is quite a laborious process, and it takes a long time. Each of these applications has a 10-day lead time in order to get a response. So if you can think about that, you've got 10 days for the CAA sign-off, 10 days for your landowner sign-off, and then 10 days for the MOD sign-off. You have to apply for all of this at least a month in advance of your flight, or you have to do what I did and nag them until they give you a response, because you're like, hey, I'm flying in the next 2 days, give me some feedback. So we did this, and this is the now Ministry of Defence application, which is very similar to the CAA application. And luckily, this application is actually in English, and you're allowed to complete it in English. And it's the reason why I didn't tell you earlier what the additional attachment documents options were, was because you're going to be able to see them here in English at this point in the video if you've made it this far. Who you are, who your legal representation is, your address, your phone number, your email, information about your drone, and some technical characteristics of the drone. So again, you can pull all of this detail from the DJI website, and I gave them as much as I could get from the website that they asked for, and then I just gave them a link to the DJI website to say, look, if you need more information, don't come back to me, it's available on the website. We don't have like a PFCO or anything like that, so we couldn't put information about a drone operator or any relevant experience because I didn't think my private or commercial pilot licenses were relevant at this point. Then we go through and we talk about our flights. So again, maximum flight levels and minimum flight levels, 0 to 300, and all the same geographic coordinates. And here's where you put in the number of your AACR or your CAA authorization to fly over these areas and at those altitudes. So that's the number there from the CAA approval document. And then it says, okay, what are you going to attach for us? So again, I gave the same maps. I gave the authorization for the CAA. So I attached that. I attached the user manual again. I attached the brief description of operations. And you can see here all the different things that they ask you to send. And the more you send, the easier it is to get approval. Once again, if your application has been completed correctly and you are successful in getting approved, then you get a document through that looks like this from the Ministry of Defence, which approves you to fly in the areas that you said you were going to fly. Again, who the operator of the drone is, the type of drone, so on and so forth. And it says that you can fly following all of these conditions, which are in Romanian. And there's an interesting caveat in here that in order to fly, this is not the last step. You have to send them an email back saying that you approve and you accept that you will fly within these drone regulations under Annex 2. So once you've replied back to this and confirmed that you will comply with all these regulations, then you have all your approvals to go to the area and set up for flying. One final thing you have to do is, and it says here, at least 30 minutes before your flight, you now have to phone up the Ministry of Defence on this number and activate your flight plan. I got my girlfriend to have this phone call because I tried and they didn't understand a word I was saying. They even went so far as to say that I don't speak English, which I thought was quite funny. But my girlfriend had the conversation with them. We got our flight plans activated. We went and did all of our flights, and then we have to phone up and close out our flight plans. So to summarize, you have to get CAA approval to fly below the minimum safe altitudes. You have to get landowner approval to fly over any national parks. You have to get MOD approval to film during your flights. And after all of that, you then have to phone the MOD half an hour before you fly to activate your flight plan and make sure that everything's okay and that they're not running any military operations in the area. And you have to tell them well in advance the dates and times and things you want to fly. So if you're trying to plan this a month in advance, I hope you can predict the weather. Now, we got extremely lucky. And as you saw in our previous videos with the drones, our weather was perfect and we got some great drone footage. But I would really feel sorry for anybody who has gone through all of this process and then gets rained out on the day and can't fly. I don't know if the new EU rules coming in next year for drone operations will standardize this across all of Europe, including Romania, and mean that you don't have to do all of this. You just have to have the EU approval relevant to your drone and the type of flying you want to do. That may make it easier to fly in Romania. But right now, this is the process you have to follow. I hope it helps you. I hope you've made it to the end and didn't get too bored or too confused. Any questions, drop a line down below. But this also proves to you that I had all the approvals for flying my drone in all the previous videos. I hope you enjoyed this series about flying the drone in Romania and the footage that I got. Any questions, as I say, let me know down below. Any feedback, please provide that also. If you have enjoyed this video and you think that you'd like to see more of what we have to offer on this channel, please consider subscribing or watching some of our other videos. Thanks for watching and have a great day.